I'm Andres Sadler. I'm the head of strategy for Wolters Kluwer, and with me I have Dr. Karl Ulrich.
I'm Karl Ulrich. I'm Vice Dean of Innovation at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. And I've been a scholar of innovation management my whole career. I'm here to talk with Andres about innovation at Wolters Kluwer and also about the idea of innovation tournaments more generally.
Innovation has been mostly considered the realm of a few that are innovating within the organization and has to come from the top and has to be funded from the top. And we wanted to push innovation to the edge. The Walkman, I believe, was invented by somebody in the line at Sony. And so it didn't come from their design team, it didn't come from their engineering team, it came from somebody who was in the line, wanted to listen to music while he was assembling products. And so we want to be able to bring the innovation from the edge to the mainstream of what we do.
That term, innovating at the edge, is really interesting. I imagine some innovation will happen entirely at the edge. That is, a Wolters Kluwer person will detect an unmet need, will then just go off and solve that problem for his or her customer, and that'll be the end of it. But many opportunities are detected for one customer, but then could be deployed in some other part of the organization. So that's one of the roles, the facilitating roles that a central innovation process can play, is in detecting those interesting opportunities that occur at the edge and finding other opportunities throughout the organization.
By pushing innovation to everybody through the tournament, it helps us engage everybody in the organization and make them think that they can be one of the innovators rather than just fulfilling one role within the organization, and that's what they are supposed to come in at 9 in the morning and leave at 5 in the afternoon, but really think that they are integral to the process of innovating and making us a better company and serving our customers better on an ongoing basis.
There are three main requirements for innovating successfully as an organization. You have to have the right people. That is, the knowledge base that's required to solve the problem has to be present in the organization. And then secondly, I think you have to have the right culture. That is, people have to have the belief that they'll be supported in their innovation activities. There have to be the appropriate rewards and incentives, the appropriate attitudes and leadership that we might all tie under the heading of culture. But I think there's also a third element, which is process. And that is, you could have great people with all the right skills, given all the right culture, put in an environment with all the right culture, and they could still fail, or they could be largely ineffective if they didn't have the tools and methods to actually solve the problem.
The question is, can we innovate in a much more intentful way than we have in the past?
The idea of a process for innovating has embedded in it a central paradox, really, which is that process by definition is doing something the same repeatedly. Innovation by definition is doing something new. So, the idea of innovating with a process, that to many people presents a paradox. And I think the way to resolve that paradox is to imagine that each new idea, each new opportunity might flow through a similar set of steps, even though the details of that opportunity could be very different. In fact, will be different by definition every time. So the question is there a way to structure an innovation process that allows for this rich diversity in the raw opportunities, but that still imposes some structure on the overall process?
What I found that was extremely powerful of the methodology that you proposed in terms of the innovation tournament is that instead of trying to ahead of time determine the few areas that were worth dedicating time against and trying to figure out a priori what are the few ideas that we should try to shepherd through the process, that really the power in the number of ideas came very clear.
The central idea behind an innovation tournament is to generate or identify a large number of raw opportunities and then to apply one or more development steps and filters to those opportunities until eventually you've identified the exceptional few. And if you think about it, that structure deals with the fundamental reality of innovation, which is that you can't predict who the winners are going to be. If you're thinking about running a pizza restaurant, and you have your choice between making 100 really good pizzas every night or making 99 inedible pizzas and then one pizza that is so fantastic that it's the best pizza in the world, any rational operations manager or small business owner would choose making 100 pretty good pizzas every night. But that's the wrong answer in innovation, and that's because you don't have to eat the pizza in innovation. You don't have to eat all the pizza. It's easy, it's inexpensive to throw away 99 bad ideas if you got one great idea. And so that requires a different kind of managerial thinking, which says it's okay to have a lot of variance. It's okay to have some good ideas and some bad ideas, as long as we have an efficient process for identifying which are the best ideas. Now, you raise another question, of course, which is, can you detect which ideas are good and which ideas are bad? And the short answer is no, you can't. So the implication of that is that we need to be very humble in the first round of a tournament. And typically in an organization like Wolters Kluwer, you would be carrying forward maybe a third or even a half of the raw ideas that you generate for another look. Especially if you think about your organization, how often is it that you identify a real market need, but then you fail to find a technological solution? That seems pretty unlikely in most of your businesses. You're a very needs-driven organization. So the primary uncertainty you're trying to resolve in innovation is the need real? How many people have this need, how many customers have this need, and how deep is the pain that they feel? And if you can resolve that uncertainty, you can probably create a solution for them.
And for us, it becomes even more critical, and that has been a little bit of a pitfall of innovation where people try to follow the product or the technology. So they try to determine, should we develop a product for the iPhone? Should we develop it instead of iOS for the Android operating system? Or should we develop it on a tablet? Or should we develop the product online? Or should it still remain in print? And in the end, becomes very difficult to predict how these technologies are going to evolve and which one will win and which one will be the loser in that game. But what you can really keep constant is the customer need. And so if you're linked to the customer need and say what would be the best way to serve that need, that pain point, then it becomes much more clear which way you have to innovate, whether you have to do it on a tablet, that would be a much better solution, or we should still serve it online for this other instance. And so in the end, keeping anchored in the customer need makes it much better for us.
When you're looking at any particular opportunity, any particular innovation, there are three basic factors that determine whether that opportunity will be a successful innovation. And the first is how good is the raw idea? That is essentially what you were just saying. Is the need real? The second is your capability at interpreting that need and delivering a solution that actually solves the customer's problem. And the third is the weather, basically, which is, does Android or iOS prevail? You can't control that as Wolters Kluwer. That's like the weather. If you look at the various entertainment casting shows that started with Pop Idol in the UK and American Idol in the United States, and there's now a version in virtually every country in the world, those are examples of tournaments in which the raw ideas are generated externally. I mean, anybody who wants to can show up. And some phases of evaluation, namely the later phases of evaluation, are also open, and that you look to the public to determine who the best entertainers are. Now, what's brilliant about that is that at the end of the day, what you really care about is will the public buy the music? And so using them as the filter in the tournament is a quite brilliant strategy by the entertainment companies who orchestrate those processes.
Initially, we thought that we would start with the tournament internally, and just probably from a process perspective, much more manageable. But eventually, it could be very interesting to open up either the evaluation or the proposal phase of innovation and the generation of ideas to the outside, to our customers. But how do you manage the fact that you're going to put some ideas of where you may go in the open and potentially even open it up for competitors?
Netflix provided the information on performance of all the teams that participated and made that public. So they had a leaderboard, and it became a badge of pride as to where your team was on that leaderboard. There was some fascinating behavior that came about because of that. One of the things that happened, the winning team, which was led by AT&T, collaborated with another team. One of the other decision variables you face is whether you run your tournament synchronously or asynchronously. And by that I mean, in a synchronous tournament, you gather all the submissions, and in one period you review them all on a relative basis, and you decide which are going to move forward. You can also run tournaments in a more asynchronous fashion, which says you accept submissions on a rolling basis over time, and those that exceed some absolute threshold are passed forward to the next stage. And in an ongoing organization where you're trying to engender innovation as a behavior, sometimes that asynchronous mode can be very effective. You usually need some kind of information system to make that happen. So there are now a variety of idea management systems that organizations use. We use one at Wharton that becomes a collaboration platform for people in different parts of the organization, through which they can submit ideas, they can discuss ideas, they can move ideas forward without any kind of formal structure or without even any formal meetings.
The asynchronous tournament that you mentioned could lead very well to collaboration.
Yeah, I'll give you an example of how that worked for us. We had an instructor at Wharton submit the idea of faculty course evaluations. So the normal mode is that students evaluate the instructor. And his idea was, well, at the end of the course, I'd really like to evaluate my students. I'd like to indicate whether they met the learning objectives and how engaged in the academic experience they were. And I thought that was a pretty good idea. So within our idea management system, we kicked that around electronically. We exchanged some email, we had a little discussion forum, and someone in our information technology group said, I can do that. And I said, great, just go do it. Any objections? And it got implemented. We never met even once to get that done. It happened all informally, and it's now institutionalized as part of our, when you submit your grades, you also evaluate your class. In virtually any area of human endeavor, there's variance in performance. If we were to go downstairs and run around the block, we'd all have different times, right? I mean, in virtually any endeavor, there's variance in human performance. It's no different in innovation. It's no different in the capability to generate new ideas. Somehow we have a problem with that in innovation, even though we don't have a problem with that in, say, Salesforce management. We readily accept that salespeople have different capabilities. We've in fact designed all our incentive systems to recognize and accommodate the fact that salespeople have different levels of performance. But somehow when applied to creative problem solving or innovation, I think we get uncomfortable with the idea that some people might be better than others at it. So on the one hand, you want to engage everyone because it builds culture. On the other hand, you want to make sure to dedicate enough resources to those individuals who are very, very good at this task that you're guaranteed of getting a large number of good ideas in your process. You have to really go to those individuals and pester them and cajole them and encourage them to participate so that you make sure you get enough of their attention, their creative thinking. And often a few hours of input from some of those people is going to be worth more than the input of everyone else in the organization. I think that's just the reality of, and the implication of there being a lot of variance in performance. But I doubt that those performance characteristics correlate directly with many of the other things we measure in organizations. I doubt they correlate, for instance, with level in the organization.
No.
I doubt they correlate with education necessarily. They may not even correlate with position in terms of what functional roles people play. And so I think it's probably an area of opportunity organizationally to start thinking about how would we identify who the high performers are in this area and make sure to encourage and develop those people.
If you look at the submissions, if you look at the results, over time you would be able to identify people who are better at providing those ideas.
I mean, one of the challenges in managing innovation tournaments is that most of the ideas will result in failure, technically. That is, we won't be pursuing them. But in fact, that's kind of the goal of the tournament, is to efficiently eliminate those opportunities that we shouldn't be wasting money on. So one of the challenges in building culture around an innovation tournament is for it to be okay to efficiently kill your idea rather than always striving to be the winner. And so that's one of the challenges also in how you recognize people and how you provide rewards, in that you don't necessarily want to reward just those who prevail, because that's a very lumpy, random kind of process, and very few are going to prevail. But rather find a way to reward those who have efficiently eliminated the need to invest more resources in bad ideas.
That is something that everybody reacted so well to the tournament that you run, is that how quickly, how simply you could begin to surface ideas, and so that you could identify which ones made at least sense or were intriguing enough to take them to the next level.
Imagine if you could get 15 minutes of dedicated attention from each employee to innovation opportunities. Let's imagine they could think of 2 ideas each, right? You'd be at 40,000 ideas or something like that. I mean, it would be a remarkable achievement. And so that's what's so powerful about engaging the whole organization in an innovation tournament, is you're essentially deploying this huge number of parallel independent exploration activities and saying, hey everyone, come back and tell us what you found. And so having that wealth of diversity that results from that parallel exploration is very powerful.
If you have enough ideas and enough contributions, you could even begin to mine the fields that they come in. So if you start seeing, it could become the snow that melts at the edge when spring comes, and so that it begins to tell you areas where you need to focus more attention when you see a lot of people providing ideas in particular aspects of your business.
The insight is that you can use the clustering of the raw ideas that were generated as a kind of map of what the possibilities are. When I go to lunch with my students, we go to a Chinese restaurant, and they fully expect that I will then run a little tournament at the table to identify what it is we should eat for lunch. So you can think of tournaments applied at a very micro level. The question is it part of the way you do your work? And if so, then you're going to apply it when you face an innovation problem. Now, some of those problems are huge problems, like, which businesses should Wolters Kluwer enter, or which businesses should it sell, or major strategic decisions for the corporation. But some of them are very small, relatively small decisions within the domain of a single individual. And there you might see tournaments being applied thousands of times a day throughout the whole organization. Identify a large number of opportunities and put them through one or more evaluation stages in order to identify what was really the best way to do things.
It becomes a tool set for people.
We have to be really a catalyst and an enabler of innovation in the organization, and that's the role I think a centralized resource can play.
We are right now structuring it as one big tournament, but as people feel more comfortable with it, they may be able to replicate it in smaller instances and much more locally as they need it, as one of the techniques that they apply to solve any issue that they are facing. Taking much more the approach of managing innovation and not just let it happen. This is something that you manage to make sure that you get the right rate of innovation, the right number of ideas, and the right amount of revenues associated with those ideas, so that we can project our business forward as we would like to see that. It's all about taking the organization to the next level of performance and to change the way that we do things.